Namaste and welcome to another edition of Bhakti Speaks. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have MC Yogi with us, longtime friend and longtime ally of Bhakti-Fest. In fact, he's been with us ever since we started, I think, in 2019. Anyhow, welcome, MC Yogi. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Sridhar.
much. Thank you so much for joining us. You're looking great. How's everything going?
Everything, all is well. All is well.
And where are you now?
So I'm in a little coastal town called Point Reyes Station, about an hour north of San Francisco, right on Highway 1. And we've had a studio here for about 20 years. Actually, next year we're celebrating I think it's our 20-year anniversary of our yoga studio. So, and like you said, man, I've been coming to Bhakti-Fest since the genesis, since the dawn. And since the beginning, man. And I'm so grateful. And it's not every day that we get the chance to to give each other flowers and say thank you and appreciate you. And I'm so grateful, not only to you, Sridhar, but to your family and to the community, the staff, everyone who works so hard, has been putting Bhakti-Fest together all these years. I'm so grateful. So thanks for including me.
Absolutely. We've been watching your development over the years. And personally, I'm always attracted to people that are actually doing the work on themselves, and I can honestly say that you've been one of those people. Not everybody I can say that about. But so let me ask you a few questions. First, maybe you can give us a little background of who MC Yogi is and how you got that name, where you started from. A lot of the people maybe heard of you and listened to your music, but a lot of people don't even know you're an exceptional yoga teacher as well. So give us a little background.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I feel so blessed and so lucky because I had the opportunity to study with some amazing teachers when I was very young. My first yoga teacher was my father. When I was 17 years old, I was just leaving a group home for problem kids. So I lived there for 2.5 years after getting arrested a bunch of time, and I got kicked out of every school I went to, and I was just having a lot of issues growing up. And it's when my dad introduced yoga to me when I was 17 that everything started to change. Everything turned around, and doors started opening up. And I'd always been involved in music, and I was a graffiti writer from a really young age, like 12, 13 years old, running around painting on trains and overpasses, and running around with, my little crew, my little group of friends who were getting into all kinds of trouble. And thanks to my father, he taught me yoga with the very first teaching. And his very first teaching to me was, listen to your breath. And I was like, wow. So that was the first step. And then he started showing me some postures, and I started practicing. And that led me on a whole journey and adventure that took me to India many times. And I studied with my dad's teacher and my dad's teacher's teacher, and traveled to many different ashrams throughout India. Met and fell in love with my wife. And we opened our studio 20 years ago. Been teaching ever since. And it's just been an amazing adventure, man. So grateful to be here.
How old were you when your father first turned you on to yoga?
So I had just left the program. So I graduated high school late, because like I was saying, I was like a straight F student, and I was getting kicked out. And so I kept getting suspended and expelled and put into other schools, continuation schools. And then finally ended up in a group home for 2.5 years.
Who put you into that group home?
Well, essentially I put myself in there. But I made a decision that because a lot of my friends were ending up in juvenile hall and going to prison, and so some of them committed suicide, and my friends were selling drugs and involved in just a lot of problematic behavior, and it was kind of a downward spiral. So when I went to the group home, it was ultimately my decision to go because you had to want to go to this program. And the group home provided me with the structure and the discipline, just like the daily routine. And then when I started practicing yoga, I started to develop the internal structure, discipline, and routine to basically create a path that I've been walking on ever since. And as you know, the path has highs and lows and valleys and mountains, and we've seen all kinds of amazing things. but it's really thanks to my dad and to my teachers that kind of set me on that course. And that really opened me up to pursuing music and art full time, and teaching full time. And it's just, yeah, one thing led to another. It's like a vinyasa. Everything leads you on to the next step, the next phase, the next stage.
How old were you when you first went to India, and why did you go to India?
So I was 20, I think I was 20 or 21 when I first went to India for the first time. And I was invited because my friend Krishna was getting married. And that also, actually, I wrote a book a couple years ago called Spiritual Graffiti, and it talks about my adventures and some pretty funny stories, things that happened in India, hopping around different ashrams, studying with different gurus and different teachers, and then ultimately coming to the realization that there is no external teacher. There are great guides along the way, great saints and siddhas and great masters, but ultimately the teacher is the breath. The teacher is the awareness, our ability to be the seer, relax into being. And now I'm learning. I'm 43 now, and it's just starting to dawn on me. Just being is enough. Just being is enough.
Exactly. And it'll continue to be that way for another 40 years. That doesn't change. When we're brought into this world, we're brought in with a breath. And when
Right.
we leave this world, we leave this world with a breath.
So
And
we're in good, and then that's the reminder: with every inhale, good input, receiving grace; with every exhale, good output, giving thanks. So truly grateful to be breathing at the same time with you, Sridhar.
that's it, brother. Thank you so much. How important do you think is the spiritual path for today's practitioners of yoga? Because I notice a lot of people go to the yoga classes, they're all looking good, and it's the same stuff. They puff up with the Hollywood yoga kind of stuff, and the music, and they're there to meet people and stuff like that. It's not really a serious practice. Um, Tell me your thoughts on that.
I think the practice meets us where we are, and if we commit to it, it'll lead us deeper, and it'll kind of show us our weaknesses and our strengths. I think we tend to favor our strengths and avoid our weaknesses. I think that's a natural human trait or tendency. Tendency in the yoga tradition is called vasanas. The patterns that we repeat over and over again. I know I've got my bad patterns that I'm working on overriding through the sadhana, through the mantras, through the postures and the sitting practice. So, I'm 20 years in, but I really feel like I'm just starting to get it. I feel like I'm a beginner. And in terms of whatever's going on externally, what other people are doing, I'm finding that it's less my business and it's more my focus to just try to stay anchored and rooted inside and working on my mind. And I think that, being able to relax thought back into spirit, dissolve thought back into breath, relax back into being. The more I do that, the more it becomes my default setting. It becomes easier and more natural just to let go of what everyone else is doing and just stay focused on my own internal practice. And that seems to affect how I relate to everybody. And if I'm judging or criticizing or just observing, I'm really working to disentangle from my thoughts, the patterns, and create deeper patterns that are, moving back into the moment.
That's beautiful process there. How important do you think is the philosophy of yoga? I notice a lot of teachers are just dealing with the physical aspect, but when you start,
yeah, go
when you
ahead.
start talking with them about philosophy and the sutras and Bhagavad Gita's and all these kind of things, they look at you with a big question mark.
And that was my dad's teacher named Larry, who used to travel and teach yoga to the Grateful Dead. He used to always tell me, if you have a question, don't go to external sources to find the answer. Sit with the question, live in the inquiry, and keep asking the question over and over and over again until it'll start to open up inside you, and you'll start to see that the answer is always within. I do look to the Gita and I look to the sutras as guides and sort of scaffolding to help me sort of ascend the spine. But ultimately, I feel like there comes a point where all philosophy needs to be discarded, and all intellectualism and sectarianism and all the compartmentalization and categorization needs to be dissolved, because ultimately what is like letting go of everything is when we open up and see who is seeing. So I think philosophy is very helpful and very supportive, but at a certain point it becomes a crutch and it needs to be released in order to go further on the path.
Yeah, exactly. You can go very deep either way, but when you get too attached to that path or that way, thinking that, oh, okay, I can spout out, sutras and chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, so look at me,
Yeah.
that's meaningless in the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's,
Go
I
ahead.
think you're right on it, man. Like ultimately letting everything go and letting God. I have this little equation where ego, ego is just energy that needs to go. And where does it need to go? It needs to go toward God. So letting go and letting God, it becomes everything turns into an offering. Place it on the altar and it starts altering. So with my sort of the patterns that I'm working on internally is like my rhyme schemes and the way I structure verses and songs, and I use that sort of those neural connectors when I'm rehearsing rhymes internally, whether I'm doing japa, mantra, ram, nam, or just working on a verse. It helps to focus and concentrate my attention to unstick and unhook from everything else external so that I'm really shaping the mental temple, the cerebral cathedral. So creating that inner space where it becomes a sanctuary and a refuge where I can find some peace and stillness in the middle of my life, even in the midst of my chaotic, insane mind, because the ego really is insane. But the more I can take that energy and direct it and flood it and move it back into being, the more I can shape my consciousness so that it's becoming, as the Gita says, the mind becomes a friend, no longer a fiend, or no longer a foe. So that's what I've been doing for the past, I don't know, 20, maybe even longer, because I've been working on music since I was really, really young.
What category of music would you classify your work in? What
I don't
genre?
really, that's a great question. I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, I definitely grew up at a time when hip hop was ascendant, and I grew up listening to, classic rock, psychedelic rock. I grew up listening to reggae. I know you were at Woodstock on the stage, looking out at that sea of people, feeling all that energy and that vibration and that sound. So I'm a fan of all music. Specifically devotional and spiritual music really seems to resonate the deepest. But I don't know how to answer that, Sridhar. I don't know what category you would want to put me in.
It's interesting you mentioned Woodstock, because just 2 days ago I was interviewed by the new museum that's being built in Bethel, upstate New York, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
all the museum on the land that Woodstock was. Is a gorgeous museum, and they interviewed me for my story of how I got there and how I brought the Swami Satchidananda there, who, by the way, had a beautiful saying about the ego. But somebody asked him, Swami, how should we get rid of the ego? And he said, go.
There it is.
When you brought that up, I remember him telling me that. Anyhow, so I was doing this interview just the other day, and I was telling her that after Swami did his invocation, we stood on the back of the stage looking at these 500,000 crazy people out there. That was
Wow.
totally wild, but it was such an incredible age. The 60s was just so blissful and so much love. Nothing today can even come close to it. And I said to Swami, one day, Swami will have these people chanting the divine names, right? And he says, "Oh, I hope so, Sridhar." And like 40 years, almost to the day, from
Wow.
1969 to 2009, we created the Bhakti-Fest.
That's
And I always
amazing.
had that in my back of my mind every time I thought about that, you know.
And I have so many beautiful memories of being out in the desert under the stars with so many beautiful souls. And I just can't tell you how amazing it is to be, in the desert, which is so spacious and expansive and so cosmic, and to be around all these amazing beings. And just to name a few, like chanting with Krishna Das and Bhagavan Das and Jayutal and Gauravani and the Mayapuris and the Kirtaniyas and gosh, so many great artists, DJ Drez and his wife Marty. And I'm seeing the faces of so many friends and so many incredible people. There's almost too many to name, but I've had so many moments out there under the stars where I just want to pinch myself. Actually, I did have one moment where I was backstage getting ready to go on, and I had to go use the restroom, and someone was in there. So I went around the desert, and I didn't know I actually sat on a cactus. And I got like a free acupuncture session because I had to pull like 100 pins out before I went on stage.
I'll make sure we have another extra bathroom for you next year. And I'll just see reserved for MC. So great. So how important you think is a daily practice for most people?
I think it's the anchor. And I think specifically morning practice, just taking a few moments just to sit, just to be quiet, be still. And I think that calibrates and sets you up for success. Even sitting for like, oh, I got a fire engine going by. And I once I was in Catholic school when I got kicked out of Catholic school too, but I was in Catholic school and I had a nun, and she was a real strict nun. And she used to say, whenever you hear a siren, say a prayer. So I always say a little Hail Mary when there's a siren going by. So sending a prayer to whoever that's for.
Oh, that's very lovely. Yes, a thought. You know, every day when I wake up and I sit in front of my altar to start my meditation, I'm always giving thanks for giving me another day to be alive, to be healthy, to be able to serve, to love and be compassionate, and remembering our mothers and fathers and our lineage that came before us that blessed us in order to give us this opportunity to do more work in this world, you know.
Amen.
But to pay that respect each and every day, I feel is very, very important to start the day off like that.
Yeah, I find that gratitude is one of the greatest tools that I have to shift my mind away from being cynical, critical, judgmental, divisive. All the natural tendencies of the disconnected mind. I think it's what we all experience just having a mind. And whenever I'm able to really think about my dad or my mom or my wife or just the people in my life who've given me so much, it really shifts the internal landscape of my thinking, and I move from thinking to thanking. And it really does have a tremendous, from acidic or egoic to alkaline or divine. It really realigns me from the inside. And so every opportunity to remember that, thank you for reminding me that, just being thankful, just quietly internally, just giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks. There's so much to be grateful for, even in the midst of everything. I appreciate that reminder.
And I think we need to have that reminder for each other all the time. Because when we talk to everybody every day, to always remind everybody reverence, respect, appreciation.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Thank you. I appreciate you, whoever you are. There's so much anxiety. You know, everybody says that life is going to get better, life is getting better, and then you wake up the next day and a new set of drama befalls us, right? And this is going to be for our whole lives.
Yeah.
It's the disassociation of the of the drama, right? And
Yeah, so I once heard that all anxiety comes from future thinking and all depression comes from past thinking. And so in the present moment, uh, anxiety and depression dissolve into being when I'm able to soften my thought patterns back into spirit, the space shining inside the center of my life. And it becomes a practice of dissolving concepts, dissolving, because all separation only exists in our imagination. In reality, we know on a bone level that everything is connected. The air is connected, the water is flowing. We all exist under the same canopy of stars on the same earth. We share the same elements. Everything is intimately interwoven. But the mind, the Mayic mind, I once heard that when the mind moves, it's Maya. When the mind is still, it's moksha. And the ultimate practice I'm just starting to get a glimpse of and just starting to recognize and see is that I can be still in the midst of movement, even though the mind is moving, even though the body is breathing, spirit is not moving. Spirit is indestructible, invincible, unbroken. There's nothing that can be added to spirit. Spirit doesn't need anything from us. It's all loving, all encompassing. It's awake, it's conscious, it's blissful, it's ecstatic, it's ever present, always here, in and all around us. And when the mind can soften, dissolve, and reintegrate back into it through the sadhana, through the practice of yoga, meditation, mantra, whatever tool or technique you're using, then the future and the past disappear into the present, and we can feel how heaven is actually here. Heaven is within us, and when we're inside of it, it's all around us. And so I feel so grateful and thankful that I had and continue to have association with these specific teachers in my life. My father, my teacher Larry, my teacher Dorothy, who was like a coach, a counselor for me, and so many beautiful teachers at Bhakti-Fest. I've done yoga with, Saul David Ray, Sienna Sherman, Shiva Ray, so many great, the calls with Ram Dass, and just being in the environment of the teachings and in the community, in the Sangha, in satsang, it's such a, it's so crucial, to have that. The Buddha says the teacher, the teachings, and the community. So having that constellation of those three things.
Sangha, yeah. From an early age, pretty much when you kind of started, it was like that with me back in my early 20s when I realized I want to spend time with teachers that know more than me.
Right.
I don't want to spend time with people that know the same as me or less than me, because I've always felt that was a waste of time. It was good to have friends and stuff like that, but my whole life was in the search of hanging out with, and I did. Every opportunity I did to meet the great ones, the luminaries, I just went for it. Where are you going? I'm in my past relationships. I would take off for like a month, go back to India. My wife at the time would say, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'll be back in a month." "What are you doing?"
Sridhar,
I said, I'm going to India. And I said,
can
"Don't
I
worry."
ask, when was the first time that you heard about Maharaji?
Oh, I knew about him when those guys were studying with him, when Ram Dass and Krishnadas were with him. But I was with Muktananda at the same time. So he was
Wow.
my guru from 1970 when I first met him to 1982 when he left his
Wow.
body. Yeah.
Wow. So,
So,
and then what was your first encounter with Ram Dass?
the weekend of the Labor Day weekend in 1970, my meditation teacher by the name of Rudy, during the 60s, I had a yoga guru who was Swami Satchidananda, but I had a meditation teacher who was named Rudy. And Rudy sponsored Muktananda's. Rudy was the only Western disciple of Bhagawan Nityananda,
Wow. Yeah.
the great Siddha Yoga, who
Yeah.
lived in Ganeshpuri for 35 years in a loincloth and was totally enlightened.
So I went to his Samadhi shrine in Ganeshpuri and sat, and it was like I've been there several times, but the first time I went, the frequency and the just like the vibration like this was so intense that I wasn't totally acclimated to it. It was like I felt like I was at this lower vibratory frequency, and this energy was so high and so strong that it was almost like it was like going to altitude. So it was interesting. It was very.
Absolutely. I've been at the same place many times that you're talking about, because when you go to Ganeshpur, you can actually go into his room where he meditated every day. And
Yeah,
I'll
that's
be
right.
I'll be there next month, actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm taking a group of 23 people on a Bhakti Yatra. Hopefully, one of these years you'll be able to join us. I would
Yeah,
love
I
for you
would
to do that.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, if
That
we're
would
going to
be
be
great.
with Radha Swami and at the Flower Festival, with Gauravani and Raghunath and
I love it.
Radha Swami and all the boys and the Maharaj. And then we're going out to the Echo Village, which is really a fabulous place. If you ever get a chance to get out there, it's outside of Mumbai. Then we're heading to Ganeshpuri for just a day to sit
Wow.
at Muktananda's Mahasamadhi shrine and, of course, visit Nityananda, who has been a big, huge presence. But segueing back to that fateful day in Labor Day weekend in 1970, Muktananda arrived, and that was his first weekend to have everybody come. And in the little small group, it was like 50 to 100 people there. It was Ramdas, Swami Venkateshananda, who was a direct disciple of Shivananda from the Divine Life Society, Hilda
Right.
Charlton, Hilda Charlton from Brooklyn, this great woman psychic that you sat next to her and you didn't have to talk about anything. You immediately went into a very deep a really out there lady. I have to tell you, she was a divine goddess, actually. Uh, and some other luminaries, and Rudy was there. And so we were sitting in Baba's room, Baba Muktananda's room. He turned to Ramdas and me and said, I want you two to organize my tour across the country. This is 1970, Labor Day. I looked at him. I didn't know who Ramdas was. And of course, he didn't know who little Sridhar was, right? But that's how we connected. And we
Wow.
traveled across the country organizing that tour. And
So
then
was that mostly in the East Coast, or that was across the whole country?
we went to Colorado. That's, we visited the Rinpoche there. And then we were out in Los Angeles and San Francisco area, like that. That was the first world tour. The Muktananda came twice more in 74 and in 80.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Shakti, man.
And then Ramdas and I were this close ever since 1970 till, he passed away in December 2019. And I was just recalling that because the date is coming up in a couple of weeks. And I went to that retreat on Maui, Ramdas and Krishnadas. And we finished the retreat. We were over at the house. We're having lunch. I was leaving the next day, or later on that day, I was leaving for Vietnam on my way to India. I love Vietnam and I love the Asian countries. So I was sitting with Baba. We were having breakfast, and I said, first of all, he allowed me to come and interview him every year. And that's how this whole Bhakti Speaks program began, because I interviewed him for 11 years. Every April, I would go out there. I had a 3-camera crew, and we sat just like we're doing now and just talking on spiritual contemporary subject matter. And we had the best time. And our agreement in the beginning, when he allowed me to do this, I said, Baba, I want to be able to ask you anything about your personal life, about everything. Just be totally transparent, because that's what we need to be. We can't be hiding behind any false veils anymore. We really have to be transparent. Yeah, I fucked up. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, and I'll try not to do that again.
We're
And
all
he
human.
said to me, absolutely, just go for it. And I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're really fantastic. They're all up on YouTube, the Bhakti Speaks. But then this past year, I said, you know, when he left his body, he told me, continue to do these talks and do these, because it's a very important to get this message out to everybody. You know? So I said goodbye to him. I gave him a kiss, and then next 2 days later, I left. 2 days later, he passed. As soon as I got to Vietnam, I turned around and came back. I mean,
Wow.
my body was destroyed, but I came back because we had him out for 3 days, and everybody was able to come in and to visit him during those 3 days. And I have this all on video, by the way. Someday I'll come out with a video on this. It was a remarkable friendship, very deep. He taught me so much. He gave me so much, and I think that's what the deep friendships that we develop over the years between each other, where we can just call each other up and talk about anything, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember some of the questions you asked him?
We talked about everything, and some of the stuff we're bringing up now. But you know, it's funny. Just the other day, I was listening to something, and I said, you know, Baba, I was down at the grocery store the other day, and these two Hawaiian people, this big guy, was arguing with his girlfriend, screaming, starting to get pushy and stuff like that. What do you do in a situation like that? Do you go up to them and try to make peace? Or do you mind your own business and leave? Because in today's day and age, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because you can go up there, the guy turns around and kills you, you know? I mean, how far do we go to maintain peace? I mean, what do you think about that? Before I tell you his answer.
Well, first, I think it's a great question, and I've encountered some situations like that. And I think the word that comes up for me is discernment, and not contributing fear or judgment or criticism or thought, projecting it onto the situation, which energetically is just adding fuel to the fire. But depending on the situation, sort of like that nun taught me early on in my life, is that when I see some disturbance, I really go into my practice and start to generate some good energy, and seeing if I can transmit it from afar, try to send some, you know, but I don't know the situation. So I don't know what has led up to the situation.
Right.
I don't know what the karmas are involved in the situation. So I don't want to drag myself and get entangled into it to the point where I'm going to make it worse. So I try to shift my mind and move away from divided mind back into the unified field. And from that inner space of being connected, just really send those rainbow rays, those radiant rainbow rays of loving kindness and compassion in a subtle way. Now, if there's something that I can step into and be of service, then I trust my discernment. My instinct will alert me to that, and I will make the practical move that needs to be made. But I'm really curious to hear what Baba said.
He said to me, after thinking about it for a few minutes, he said, you go and you try to give them as much love as possible without jumping in and harming yourself and the situation, you know?
Yeah.
But again, I had to push him on that, because that's that's such a delicate area. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
who are we to be able to know how much, love and stuff like that? Because I've been in situations where I tried that, and I practically got beat up, because it's like, mind your own business. It has nothing to do with you, right?
Yeah, so I think it's case by case, scenario by scenario, but I do think that is where the practice kicks in, is when those things show up. Like if someone in my family has been injured, or there's some sort of catastrophe or something going on, instead of getting emotional, instead of getting reactive, I feel like that's the time in the Gita where it's like, okay, rise up and act, even if it's a subtle action of catching yourself and starting to generate an awareness, not seeing everything as divided or separate, but seeing everything as the beloved, as the divine, and then trusting, having that trust that I will instinctually know what to do if I'm listening, connected, and paying attention. If I'm emotional and overreacting, I'm going to do something foolish and get myself in trouble.
That's it. So that word that you brought up, discernment, I think
Yeah,
is one of the key words in spiritual practice, really.
yeah, Viveka.
It's a
Yeah,
great word, and a lot of people don't even understand the meaning of it and how to adapt that, We're so quick to get involved,
right.
right? We're so quick to judge.
Well, when we identify with thought and emotion, we're identifying with impermanent, transient waves, and then we suffer because they want to move. Waves want to move. You can't hold a wave. A wave's got to roll. So if I'm identifying with the wave, then it's taking me up and down, and it's taking me on a ride. If I identify as the ocean, if I operate on the level of, so I can operate on the level of thinking, I can operate on the level of the physical body, my biology, or I can operate on the level of the soul. And if I'm operating on the level of my soul, I'm going to be able to see thoughts, emotions, and everything happening in the phenomenal world from a deeper perspective and not get tricked by the magic spell of the mind, which makes everything seem like it's separate. From the position of the seer, I can see how everything is the gunas. Everything is the wave of tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. Everything in nature is made of three things. Darkness, we all have darkness. There's no one without darkness. Light, we all have light. There's no one or nothing without light, and we all have mixed, where those two are mixing together, and there's some conflict or some tension. And so if I can identify that, see the waves from the perspective of the soul, then I'm less likely to judge, react, get emotional, take it personal. This is the master course, because I can't say that I've really sort of established myself in the space, because I still get swept up in
We
the
all do.
emotional ride, yeah, and the intellectual ride. But the more I can remain rooted, relaxed, and present, just being, then I can observe and see the world and just extend loving kindness in all directions. And I'm learning, man. Ram Dass said the whole first half of your life is becoming somebody, and the second half is becoming nobody. So I'm working on it.
Every situation we come in, we have to take that step back,
Yeah,
take that breath or two or three, and just say, okay, how can I help? How can I serve to the highest good? Um, without identifying and without getting caught up in the moment. That's the tricky part,
yeah,
because when the ego arises and the battle begins and it's one or two people, whatever, our egos are battling it out, not our
yeah,
love, not our heart,
right.
not our compassion. It's, oh, I need to be right in this situation, right?
Imagination, all imagination.
Right.
And
So
so this is one of the sort of the internal sort of mental, sharpen my mental blade. I this is one of the verses that I've been that I repeat to myself. And it goes like this: escape the net, don't let yourself get caught. Tangled, twisted mind tied up in these knots, trapped in the web, spread across the head, following the thread of the breath instead, fraught by desires, caught up in these wires. The more we struggle, more the ropes grow tighter. Not this, not this, not this, detach. Unstick it from the surface, draw the mind back, backtrack through these sense hallways. Eye of the needle slip through the crawl space, into the place where the walls fall away. Everything is made of particles and waves. The light of a million suns shines in us all. Let the mind draw back, collapse, and fall into a light so bright the mind just dissolves. Remove your shoes, enter the temple. And it goes, road made of diamonds, travel in this winding path that leads back into the timeless bliss that exists. Feel it shine deep inside us. Snakes uncoiled, royal, they don't strike us. Taking refuge underneath the holy ficus, lotus throne known by the pious, pure awareness abiding in the silence. The only prerequisite to enter it is kindness. To enter the treasure, hidden in the center, balance both sides, effort and surrender. Steady practice, strike the matchstick, incense lit, time to stretch the fabric, open every door and drawer of the cabinet, draw the mind back toward the central magnet. Ancient science written on papyrus, discovering the bliss that exists behind these eyelids. So everything is exactly what you're saying. It's the process of unsticking and then seeing. So unhooking or detaching in order to connect to something deeper. And then from that deeper connection, really shining out with more grace. And so that's been my practice is just kind of shaping and constructing these words, verses, songs, and stories to help remind myself essentially that practice is ongoing. It never ends. It's perpetual.
So there's no actual end, there's no goal. I mean, you can have goals, but there's no goal that's going to say, okay, this is the end. Now you've arrived, because there is no arrival, because you never departed.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
are in this from the beginning to the end.
And nature never ends. She cannot be destroyed. She's eternal. She goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, I love the way your mind functions, and how do you come up with these rapping, spiritual rapping songs and like that? What is your process for that?
I like to think of it as unwrapping.
Oh, no.
Uh, but the process is just a tiny phrase like there's a treasure in the center, a treasure in the center, a treasure in the center that's too deep to measure. It can never be destroyed. It can never be severed, and it shines forever. So the first two words I'll have is treasure and center. So I start repeating those to myself over and over internally, quietly. Treasure in the center, treasure in the center, treasure. And I'll chant them internally and repeat them internally until I feel what they mean, what they represent. So it's not just a word, it's not just a symbol, but really trying to get to the center of each word. There's a treasure in the center. What does it mean? There's a treasure in the center, treasure in the center, treasure in the center. It's too deep to measure. I'll find my next rhyme. It can never be destroyed. It can never be severed. It's invincible and it shines forever. So I'm just taking those words, treasure, center, sever, forever. And I'm finding those end caps at the end of the sentences. And then I'm basically filling in the blanks. I'm trying to construct and then sometimes there'll be rhymes inside of rhymes. Well, there'll be like a couple words inside that will go together. So it's basically just constellation and just shaping syllables and sounds so that everything has like a pattern, a rhythm, or a cadence that fits into the structure of whatever the drum pattern is. And what it does, it kind of lands my mind in the moment, in the rhythm. And it's why for me, making music is a practice in focus and concentration. Because I find that the way out of a lot of this misery that I experience on a regular basis is being able to move to a deeper level of the mind. So if I stay on that same level where the problem is, it just gets more problematic, more problematic, more problematic. If I can break through that level through concentration, a couple ways I do it. I heard there's two paths. You can be like a baby monkey clinging to your mother's back with all your effort and might, or you could be like a baby kitten where you hang limp in the mother's mouth, completely surrendered. And so we're constantly sort of fluttering between these two of maximum effort, which is concentration, and then maximum surrender, relinquish, relax, offer, let go. And so the way that these rhymes happen is I focus my maximum mental energy on writing, and then I have to completely release it. So I get out of the sentence.
Wow. Fascinating.
Words are really powerful, man. Words create worlds.
And then how do you put the music together for that?
And so the music, I have no training. So a lot of all my melodies, I just hum them. And I produce all my own music with my friends. And basically I just sort of curate and sort of, I guess, like conduct, like a conductor, and just bring people together in the room and kind of creative direct, but also be open and listen. So again, that's another dance of like concentration, but also surrender. Knowing what I want to create, but also being open to like a greater magic that maybe that's beyond what I could come up with myself. And that's, music is such a powerful practice because it says that you can have a lot of people in a room arguing at the same time and no one will be heard. But you can have a huge room where everyone's singing at the same time and everybody will be heard. So I think music is like medicine and magic like that, where it helps to harmonize, bring everything together, and create unity.
Beautiful, beautiful. What do you think about this phrase? Be a free thinker and don't accept everything you hear as truth. Be critical and evaluate what you believe in. Some guy by the name of Aristotle said that.
I think he had his ear to the ground, man.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the old Greek teachers, Socrates and
Me too.
Plato, and my roots go back to there because I studied them a lot when I was your age. And
so you studied Western philosophy and the Stoics and
absolutely, and
yeah,
half my library is filled with those books.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan.
Are you familiar with Manly P. Hall?
In my earlier days, I remember I never read any of his work, but I'm familiar with who he is.
You might want to relook at it. He's been one of my great guys over the years. Absolutely amazing. Similar to like an Alan Watts, but
I love Alan Watts.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Alan Watts.
And Ram Dass had a fantastic relationship with these guys,
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I have to just, again, give you your flowers, Sridhar. Like, I mean, the generation of really your generation brought so much to the table and moved so much forward and really opened up so many doors. And I am truly grateful for just your whole generation, man. It was a huge moment in time, and it's still echoing.
It is, and every time we come together at a Bhakti-Fest or a Shakti-Fest, I feel that same spirit of the '60s reigniting again, and that's why I get so blissful. And you see me dancing all the time, right?
Sridhar, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
And I was thinking about this yesterday. Do you feel like time has gone fast? Do you feel like there's times in your life where things were slower? Do you feel like things are speeding up? Do you feel like everything that happened in a flash? Like how do you experience time?
Well, I think for me, time changed when technology changed.
Interesting.
So when we got the internet, when we got the cell phones, I grew up with no phones. Our TV was a little round little thing, and we hardly ever watched it. We mostly listened to radio. But when the cell phone came, and I'm as addicted like everybody else.
Yeah, me too.
And then when it tells me, "Oh, you're on the phone for 10 hours today," I said, "I'm not on the phone, but I'm texting and I'm scrolling, right?" But then I put it down. I say, "What? You don't need it." You look at the old days. I remember a great story. Ram Dass came and visited me in the. He used to come out a lot. We had an ashram in Topanga Canyon, and all the great spiritual beings that came from India, all the swamis, they came to the Center for Spiritual Studies, from Yogi Bhajan to Swami Satchidananda, Muktananda, everybody was there. Amma stayed there for 17 years every time she came to LA.
Wow. Wow.
But it was that's where Krishna Das, the Amazing Grace, they all got their start in the early 70s and stuff like that. So Ram Dass came out one time and we were sitting there and takes out this big bag of white powder and something like that. And he starts dividing it up. He says, "Okay, this is for Allen Ginsberg. This is for, Lawrence Ferlinghetti. And this is for this." He starts naming off all these guys, and there's nothing left on it was actually a piece of newspaper. There's nothing left. I said, "Baba, you forgot about me." And because it was LSD from Osley acid, right? And he says, lick the newspaper. I says, I don't lick newspapers, I'm a vegetarian. So I licked the newspaper. And then I had to go to San Fernando Valley to do some errands. So I said, all right, Baba, not thinking anything was going to take place, right? So I left and drove across in the valley, and there it came on, right?
Wow.
In Canoga Park, California, in San Fernando Valley, millions of people. And I'm on this ferocious moment, right, of time and space.
Wow.
I was sitting in the gas station there, and I went to the telephone. I had to find a quarter back then, or it was maybe a dime back then, I don't remember. And I called up my house number, because of course there's no cells, and he picked up the phone because he was there. I said, Baba, I'm stuck out here. I can't move. I can't drive. I can't do anything. He says, just take your time, get into the car, drive back up, and I'll wait for you. And I got into the car, and I'm going like 5 miles an hour or 10 miles up this windy Topanga Canyon Boulevard road up
Yeah.
into Topanga from the valley.
Yeah.
You've been
Yeah.
on it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then I finally get close to where I'm living, and I'm still driving like people were hunking, and there's long lines behind me. Then I see a guy standing out on the side of the road in a long gown, and I'm getting closer and closer. And I said, that's Baba. And I pull over. He says, jump in, I'll drive. He said, move over. And at that time, I had my health food store. I started the first natural food store in Southern California in
Wow.
1970. So this was around 72, 73. And he's driving me. Now I'm the passenger experiencing my acid trip. And he's driving me up and down this boulevard to and fro the store and showing me all the things that I miss every day when I'm going someplace.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
You start
Yeah.
off and you have, oh, I'm going here. So that's your vision. And that's where you go. I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going here. But you never are in the moment of the time you're leaving to the time you're getting there. So it's all about the journey.
Yeah.
It's not about the destination, because when you get to the destination, you're going to say, I'm here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what? So what? So it's the destination. He pointed that out, the trees, the birds, the flowers, and I was never the same after that. That key moment of showing me how to live in the moment kept in my entire life since that moment. You see, those powerful moments can stay with you because they're profound teachings.
Do you remember what kind of car you were in?
No.
Did you have a Volkswagen?
I think that one was a Nissan station wagon, maybe.
So this is like early. What year did you open your grocery store? 70?
1970.
Wow.
Right after I finished the tour, after I left the tour with Muktananda in San Francisco, he left. I had met my first wonderful wife there, and then we moved down to Ojai, and I was teaching yoga in Ojai, and
Oh,
and then one evening doing the meditation during the night, I had this inspiration to go down to Topanga, and I woke up and I said, I'm going to go to Topanga from Ojai. She said, my wife said, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, but the message was very clear. Go to Topanga. The sign will be there.
Isn't that amazing how I've had so many moments in my life where I just felt guided. It didn't make any sense. It was like that when I met my wife, Amanda. It was just, none of it made any sense. But there was some kind of energy, some kind of soul energy, like a soul recognition. When she first walked in through the door in San Francisco, it was on a Sunday, I instantly knew that I was going to marry her the moment that I first laid eyes on her. And it was almost like a soul recognition, like someone that you'd known from before. I can't explain it, but there's just like a knowing. It's not a thought. It doesn't make any sense. It's not intellectual. It's just there's just a feeling or a sense that something is right. Like this is where exactly right time, right place, right state of mind. This is where exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And everything just kind of lines up and falls into place. And it's just it's so mysterious and so awesome. And I'm just so amazed at when that happens.
How long are you in a relationship?
So next year we'll be celebrating our 20-year anniversary.
Fantastic. Congratulations. So what words of advice do you have for people that are in relationship or want to be in relationship but have not been have that ability? I basically think it's surrendering and
Yeah,
not
yeah,
wanting to change each other, you know?
yeah. That's really well said. I think that's a good recipe, and also everything that's built on the foundation of friendship will last forever.
Right.
If it's built on any other cornerstone, it'll probably crumble. And I think that having a spiritual um, power, a spiritual connection, a spiritual practice that you share in common, and also sharing a process and a journey. Maybe it's a shared goal. Because we both teach and we travel and we do trainings and workshops, and Amanda performs with me, so we have that. Our lives are parallel. They're running side by side, and then having space too. Having time together, time apart, and just trusting each other and just being there for each other because we all have highs and lows. And it's a journey. Just enjoying being on the path with someone. It's pretty awesome.
I know when I talk to most people getting into relationships, everybody has this thing about, I want to change you, you want to change me, and people are battling each other. And I always say, forget about this change. You're not
Yeah,
changing anybody. The only person you're changing is yourself.
right. I mean,
Opening up this heart and getting it deeper and deeper and opening up that love. You're not changing him or her. You're not doing any of that.
you want to hear a good one?
Yeah.
I thought this one the other day. When you start to accept, you become exceptional.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's relationships, especially when people are starting off on the spiritual scene and developing their own take on life and their own consciousness and their own internal process. And then they're always looking for someone that might also be there as well. And that causes confusion. Just meet somebody, love them, honor them for who they are. Everybody gets it at their own time.
Right.
They're not getting it on your time.
Everything has its own timing. And I think also not looking into external things for your happiness and satisfaction. Because if you can source that from the well of your own being, if I can drink from the well of my own being, if I can experience well-being, then all of my relationships are going to benefit from that. So it's just a constant reminder. It's very humbling. A lot of mistakes, a lot of failures, a lot of, making bad decisions in order to learn how to make better decisions. But I think ultimately what I'm finding, and, I'm just starting to glimpse it now. I feel like I'm just beginning to see it. Like I have to, like, my primary relationship is with spirit. My primary relationship is with the creator, with the source, with the seer, with the self. So many ways we can name and describe it, but ultimately it transcends all those descriptions. And being in it, just being is enough. And the more I can just be in it, in the moment, then the more I can relax around all my relationships where I'm not putting anything on anybody. So I'm really trying to take everything off of everybody that I put on them. Like my trip, my projection, my expectation, from expecting to accepting, coming back to being, and just loving, because it's all passing. It's all passing, and I don't want to waste time overthinking, judging, or being over emotional, having anxiety or depression, which comes up. So I just want to stay rooted in being, rooted in practice, be present, and just like you said, Sridhar, doing my very best to be of service and release the outcome.
Because
Relinquish.
tomorrow there's another set of
Exactly.
circumstances, and the next day, and the next day, right?
Yeah.
Here's another quote that I want to throw you away. When setting out on a journey, do not seek advice from those who have never left home.
That's a good one.
That's Rumi.
Roomies. There's always room for Rumi.
Exactly. So many people come and ask about, oh, I want to teach yoga, I want to, be a kirtan star and all this kind of stuff. But they're always having a hard time with the financial aspect. And I just tell people, try to do work and try to keep your passions separate. What
I
is
think
your
I would like to echo that and dovetail that, because when I started, I didn't make any money teaching yoga really, in the beginning. My classes were very small. Um, we lived a very sort of meager life. I had a very low overhead. We lived in a little shack, Amanda and I, that had mice, and it used to leak. And but we were very happy. We were doing what we love, and we both had other jobs. So I was like working at a pizza parlor and doing all kinds of other stuff so that I could pursue practicing and teaching as my passion. It was my labor of love. And one of the things that Amanda always says as well is like, you don't want to put a lot of pressure on your music, your art, your teaching, things that you do that you would do for no money, you would do for free. Like if I never got paid, I would still teach because I absolutely love teaching. I love the feeling that I get. I love the community. I love connecting, and I love practicing. But I always tried to have other jobs to support that until it was strong enough to support me. So it's because it always takes time. You need to invest a lot of time. You need to study, travel, be with teachers. And so I trust that if people are really truly interested in doing that, that if it's really what they love, they'll find a way to do it. Because I think when you're committed to something, the universe tends to organize itself to support your commitment. But if you're not fully committed to something, there's always lots of sort of, pendulum swinging and doubt and fear and anxiety and worry and excuses. But when you fully commit and it clicks, and you say, yes, this is exactly what I want to do, I find that the universe will got your back.
and especially with attachment to the results of your effort.
Right. Got to let go of all that.
That's it.
Go all that.
Swaha. Throw it into
Every exhale, every exhale, every exhale, every exhale.
That's beautiful. We'll leave by, I want to quote you one more pearls of Rumi. Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? It's open for all of us.
It's wide open. That reminds me of so I got another one. It goes, break through the surface, burn through the shell. The mind is a maze, got to shine through the veil. Trapped in jail and I swallowed the key. I'm the only one who can set myself free. Clear the debris, sweep rocks from the road, let go, feel the soul start to overflow. Tidal waves full of grace roll through the mind, crush every thought back into light. Burn through the fog, break through the facade, dissolving all the walls until they all fall. Shake off the chains till they all fall away. Feel the lotus unfold inside the rib cage. Clear all fear, sweep dust from the road. Feel the light shining bright inside the temple. Smash all thought and philosophy. Return to the self and you'll set the self free. So the door is open. It's up to us to walk through it. Thank you for inviting me into this conversation, Sridhar. I really enjoy just hanging out with you, man.
And look forward to having many more times that we can spend together. Next mid-September 2023, Bhakti-Fest returns to Joshua Tree. You'll be getting notice about it shortly, and looking forward to seeing you there and having people come and experiencing your yoga teaching and your fabulous music on stage. Thank you so much. My blessings and love to your beautiful wife, and a happy holiday and whatever you celebrate. You're a wonderful man. Keep up everything you're doing. You're an inspiration, and I appreciate who you are so much.
I appreciate you, Sridhar, and I appreciate the whole Bhakti family and just everybody out there. Thanks everyone for listening and joining us, and thanks to everyone who's been following on Spotify. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to being with you in the desert, celebrating under the stars.
Okay, thank you so much, brother. I'm really, really happy to see you again.
Appreciate you, Sridhar.
Okay.